What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tuesday, July 25th edition of the MLB Sims video. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. We have a 12-game MLB slate tonight. A lot of pretty good pitching, some decent offensive spots as well. So we should see some pretty spread out ownership, and it should be pretty fun to make lineups. And you shouldn't have too hard of a time getting lineups that look good and also aren't super popular. So as usual, we are going to walk through the MLB Sims tool here for DraftKings. I simulated 2,000 lineups, used my own projections, and we can take a look at the results. One thing I do want to mention at the top, we always have the caveat that this is early in the day and things are going to change, but we still do not have a line on the Boston Red Sox and Atlanta Braves game. This is a really important game. It's in Fenway Park. It's two good offenses. It's at least one good pitcher. We don't have for sure who's pitching for the Red Sox. So things are going to be a little bit more up in the air even than usual, early in the day, just because we don't have a line there. So projections are going to vary. Ownership's going to vary. All of that obviously has a big impact on the slate, but we're still going to walk through, and I'll just do my best to highlight where, things probably would change, but it would be the Atlanta and Boston game that you kind of should take with a grain of salt. It is an appealing game, but again, the projections just are likely to be a bit different by the time we get to lock and we hopefully have an announced starting pitcher and the line. Also, as always, give the video a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Give it a like on Twitter. Those both help us out quite a bit. And if you are looking to use this tool for yourself, you can use the link below this video. It is the most efficient way for you to quickly improve your DFS game. So check out that link if you're interested. Now, looking at the top lineups, you can see a variety of stacks here. That's to be expected on a 12-game slate where you do have a lot of offenses that look very similar. Looking at the top stacks tool, we have no offenses really with more than about an 8% chance of being the top stack. So you do expect things to be pretty spread out. Actually, I just refreshed it. We now have the Braves at 12%. We have every other team at 6% or below. And again, we don't have an actual line for the Braves. So that number could certainly come down as well. Point being, you're just going to see spread out offenses here. And starting at the top, we have a 5-man Cubs stack. Looking to Pablo Lopez, who's clearly one of the best pitching options on the slate today. Second highest strikeout percentage, good strikeout matchup against the Mariners. Pairing him with Ken Waldichuk, who is not particularly good, but he is pitching in San Francisco. Most importantly, he's not projected for any ownership, and he's only $5,200. So he is purely a play where if he happens to somehow pitch relatively well, you're able to get to all of the bats that you want to. Looking at the 5-man Cubs stack, you have Bellinger, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ, and Seiya Suzuki. So solid power here. They're facing Michael Kopech, who has really been volatile this year. We've seen stretches where he's unhittable. We've seen stretches where he can't get anyone out. He has about a 25% strikeout percentage, but he has also allowed almost 2 home runs per 9 innings. So very high upside spot here for the Cubs. You're getting to 2 very good one-offs in Rafael Devers and Ronald Acuna, and then your punting catcher with Victor Caratini. Also, I think worth noting here that we did use the $50K salary. Normally, I don't point that out, but when you get to a pitcher like Ken Waldichuk, and for me, when I see him showing up in my lineups or pitchers like him showing up in my lineups, I do always try and keep an eye on the salary, because it's one thing to say, oh, okay, I'm just going to bite the bullet, hope that Ken Waldichuk isn't terrible today. It's one thing to do that if you're using all your salary. It's another thing if, say, you had spent $48K. Leaving money on the table in baseball isn't the end of the world, but I don't really want to do it in Ken Waldichuk lineups where I could just get a better pitcher without sacrificing anything else. So I did want to highlight that, and that's the case in all of these Waldichuk lineups that we're seeing. So that is good to see. Next, we have a 5-man Atlanta stack. Again, kind of take this with a grain of salt, but we do know Atlanta is going to be one of the top stacks. It's just a matter of how exactly do they project once we get a line. Ronald Acuna, Marcell Ozuna, Olsen, Sean Murphy, and Ozzie Albies. So a pretty strong part of the Braves order as well, going up against what we are expecting to be Nick Pivetta as the bulk reliever. He has really good strikeout stuff, also gives up a lot of power. We have Jake McCarthy, Michael Garcia, and Anthony Volpe as your one-offs, so using value there. And then we have Waldichuk as a value pitcher. Michael Kopech is an interesting one. Talked about the Cubs in that first stack. Kopech's got good strikeout stuff, and he's projected for a fraction of the ownership of similarly priced pitchers like Aaron Savali and Alex Cobb. Those guys both project better, but you do save some ownership getting to Kopech, and you do get similar upside, albeit a lower median and a very low floor. Third, we have Arizona looking to Blake Snell and Corbin Burns. So Finally, we're getting two good pitchers here. Snell facing the Pirates, lowest implied run total on the slate. Burns facing the Reds at just $9,200. Burns has also been looking more like himself lately, about a 36% K percentage in his 4 starts in the month of July. Now, you don't want to just grab small samples like that, arbitrary samples, and say like, hey, Burns is back, but it does make you feel a little bit better, especially at the discounted price tag, that we're seeing him look more and more like the Corbin Burns of the past, as opposed to the Corbin Burns we were seeing early on in the season. High upside Arizona stack as usual. Corbin Carroll, Jake McCarthy, Longoria, Ketel Marte, and Carson Kelly. Then we're getting to some value bats with Wilmer Flores against Waldichuk, Stone Garrett in a good spot against Austin Gomber for cheap, and getting to Anthony Volpe again. So those are a few of our top stacks. And as you can see, again, the big takeaway just that you are getting a lot of different teams mixed in here in the stack section. Now we're going to highlight the top 150 and take a look at some individual exposures and stack exposures. Starting with the stacks, don't want to read too much into this. Atlanta and Boston, the top 2 teams. Atlanta is certainly going to look good against Pivetta. Boston has a more difficult matchup against Morton, but there is still upside to be had, especially in Fenway Park. So it wouldn't surprise me if Atlanta and Boston are 2 of the more popular teams that I get to. But until we get a line, I'm not too confident in that. But they are high upside offenses. Colorado is a really interesting one. They aren't very good, but they are facing Trevor Williams, who similarly is not very good, gives up power to both sides of the plate. Ryan McMahon in particular, somebody I really like, so I'll be interested to see if he shows up or how he shows up in terms of individual exposures. Talked about the Cubs in a high upside spot against Kopech. The Mets are in a high upside spot against Domingo Germán in Yankee Stadium. Solid enough pitcher, but a nice park upgrade for power for the Mets, and they do have plenty of power in their lineup. Padres are in a good spot against Rich Hill. So nothing real surprising in terms of the teams that we're getting to at the top. In terms of player exposures, Blake Snell leading the way, no issues there, getting right around the field. Good matchup against the Pirates. Don't be too scared off by what they did to Yu Darvish yesterday. Ronald Acuna at 39%. No problems if he does end up there. Decent chance that it does come down a little bit once we get a line. Alex Cobb, I alluded to when we talked about Kopech. He is one of my favorite pitchers on the slate. 21 to 22% K percentage, but facing the Athletics at just $7,600. Good at preventing runs, about a 3.5 xFIP this year. Very happy to get to him, and we're projected to be slightly over the field there. Waldichuk is the guy. It seems like there's always one cheap pitcher in this video where I say, by the time we get to lock, probably won't be getting quite as much because we will get official lineups out that give us some unexpected value. Right now, Waldichuk is that guy. Getting no ownership, we're getting 26%. As you can see in the lineups we looked at, it gives you some very, very strong lineups. And we don't have a great mid-range of pitching today. We have Alex Cobb. We have Aaron Savali. Outside of that, though, there's not a ton to love. So from that standpoint, if you can't get to those top-end guys, Lopez, Burns, Snell, for example, going all the way down to Waldichuk as your SP2, at least in theory, isn't the worst idea at 5,200. Obviously, in practice, it can go really, really poorly really quickly. But those are a couple things to keep in mind with him. Corbin Burns getting under the field right now. He is somebody that I think his projected ownership is going to come down as once we get that Boston line and things get rerun. Getting over the field on Kopech. This is a spot where if I end up not getting over the field on him, I'm fine. But if you do, it does at least make sense as far as he is getting 4% ownership. He's a mid-range pitcher on a slate that doesn't have a lot of good mid-range pitching, and he does have a 25% K percentage. Then we're getting into some of these really good bats. Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies, Fernando Tatis against Rich Hill, Devers against Morton. Then you get to Aaron Savali here at 17%. So nothing too surprising in the way of hitters. Ryan McMahon here, 11% exposure, 6% projected ownership. He is somebody I like being over the field on. I'm hoping that works out for me in my lineups later. Now, finally, I want to look by pitcher just to see if there's anything I missed, anything that stands out. We can sort by leverage here. Mentioned Waldichuk, mentioned Kopech. Steven Matz, perfectly reasonable play, 6,300. Not a good matchup against the D-backs, but he is a good enough pitcher. 3.94 xFIP this year, not getting any ownership. No problem whatsoever using him as a punt option to be a little bit over the field on. In terms of pitchers we're not getting to, Corbin Burns, I mentioned. Not getting to any George Kirby. That's kind of interesting to me since he's only getting 10% ownership. And he is a good pitcher in a good strikeout matchup. It is a scary spot. I talked about this a lot in the article that I wrote today on the website. But the Twins, Kirby has struggled some with left-handed power, and the Twins have plenty of it. Kirby's also not a great strikeout pitcher on his own, but he is very efficient, which allows him to work deep into games. And the Twins do give you plenty of strikeouts in their lineup. So he's somebody that going into the slate, I actually kind of like the idea of being over the field, but Didn't work out that way, at least in this sim, and it's not the kind of thing that I'm going to force in if I don't get to it. Pablo Lopez is pretty interesting here that you're getting under the field on him. Good strikeout matchup, good strikeout pitcher. Probably just a pricing thing. You're getting to a lot of Snell. You're getting the 20 whatever percent Burns. You're getting to some of the, you're using some cheaper pitchers so you can get to good bats. We saw how good our individual bats were. So that's probably why we're not getting there on Lopez. So again, this is not to say Lopez isn't a good play. You shouldn't play Lopez, any of that. In this particular sim, with the lineups that I entered, we were just getting a better return by saving some money on pitching and going up to some good bats. So interesting that we're under the field there. So that's pretty much all that stands out to me right now. Again, links below this video if you want to use this tool for yourself. Use it as you get closer to lock. Once lineups are out, simulate your lineups against each other. Get the best lineups in that you can. It's the easiest way for you to improve at DFS with next to no work required on your end, just a little bit of money. So check out the link if you want to use that. Other than that, thanks for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and good luck on your lineups tonight.